So what I'm going to talk about in this video is just trying to rebalance yourself in a squat. So some people end up tipping forward and end up blaming their ankles on how immobile they are or how restricted they are, when in actuality it could just be a balance issue. You're letting yourself fall forward and you're not sitting back enough. Now you can tell this by videotaping yourself from the side and looking where the barbell goes in relation to how far forward your knees are and if your heels come up off the ground. We should always aim for a vertical bar path, so straight up and down, and we shouldn't be shifting left and right onto each hip. We should be remaining completely centered and balanced all the way throughout the movement. So this video I'm just going to show you how to fix a few issues with balance, not just falling forward, but also falling backwards and shifting onto each hip. You can fix, or at least you can help all these issues by using a resistance band, and as long as you have somewhere you can loop it around that's a solid object that won't move, then you should be able to use all of these corrections. So we're just going to kick things off with the most common issue that I see that people do in the squat is they end up falling forward. A lot of people will think they have ankle immobility or ankle restrictions when they're squatting because of this, when it could just be a balance issue. So check this out. I'm just going to draw a line straight from the barbell down. And what you're going to notice is you're going to see the bar start to come down and then drift forward in front of the line there. So coming down, then drift forward, and I'll pause it at the bottom so you can see the bar is always drifting forward as he descends. And the ankles start to come off the ground here. And then they shift back. So you can see the balance start kind of over heel, midfoot area, and then drift forward onto their toes. There's nothing wrong with having even weight distribution across your entire foot, so evenly on the toes and the heel. The problem happens when it's always on one or the other and it shifts back and forth, because then it's a balance issue and it's impossible to drive the bar straight up if we're always zigzagging all over the place. The bar should always be moving in a straight line, and it's clearly not in this issue, or in this case. So I'll show you how I would go about fixing it, and there's a couple of different ways. So we can fix this by using a resistance band, and this is going to be a common theme that you see with the entire video. Is what we do is we loop it around a solid object like a squat cage and put the other end around the right below the level of the glutes, just above the hamstrings. And so we set the band up at about a hip height for this particular exercise, and we walk back to give ourselves a bit of tension in the band. So what this is doing is it's trying to pull you forward. So if the squat fault is you falling forward in the squat, this is going to try and pull you even more forward, so you really have to fight against it to stay mid-foot. So basically we're resisting falling forward by pushing back into the band. And if your issue is falling forward, this will put you back over mid-foot. Think of it like an overcorrection. So what I would get you to do is I would get you to do this either as like a warm-up or after you're squatting, or in between sets, maybe all three depending on how bad the issue is. And you should find that your heels stay on the ground when you do this, because we're forced into a bit more of a bent over position, but that's pretty normal if you're low bar squatting especially. Okay, so this is option number 2 if you're falling forward in the squat and you find your ankles or your heels start to come up off the ground. So I would first do the exercise I just showed before jumping into this one, because I find that a lot of people overdiagnose themselves with ankle immobility when it's not really the case, and it's usually a balance issue. But if you are one of the people that the last exercise doesn't really work for and your heels are still coming up off the ground, then feel free to give this one a shot. So similar to the last exercise, you're going to use resistance band, except you're going to use 2. So you need 2 solid objects. Usually I would use just the 2 sides of the squat cage. So what you do is you loop it around pretty low level, and then you loop it around the front of each ankle. And what you're going to do is you're going to squat, and what the band is going to do is it's going to apply a force going backwards, which kind of pins the heels to the ground. And you do tons of repetitions like this, and it's a bit more specific to the squat because you're actually doing a squatting motion while it still kind of stretches out the ankle and distracts it a little bit. So it gives the joint a little bit more room to move. So now you're going to see the exact opposite problem as the last person. So the bar is starting out right over their heels, which is really far back. So for them to stay balanced, they would have to, again, the bar would drift forward, but the mechanism as to why they're drifting forward is completely different. So before, there was way too much knee travel forward and the toes were starting to, or the heel was starting to come up. In this case, the person's going to over-exaggerate sitting back to the point where their toes start to come up. So they're keeping all their weight over their heel when it should be over mid-foot. So I'll let you see that here. So bar starts out way behind them, and then to keep balance, they have to let it go forward. And what you see is that there's barely any knee travel, so the knee doesn't really move forward at all, which can be a problem. And then on the way up, the toes come back. So again, they're shoving the weight backwards to try and keep it over their heel. A good coaching cue for this is actually just let the bar start over midfoot more, but you can see if someone's really trying to stay back, or trying to stay back on their heels, you can see their toes start to come up, which is a big problem. So to fix falling back in the squat, what we need to do is we have to do the exact opposite. We have to force the resistance bands to pull back against the knees so that the person has to push their knees forward. So this increases the forward knee travel, and doing so keeps them balanced, again, only if their problem is staying way too far back on their heels. So what we do is we go up to a squat cage or something solid and set up 2 resistance bands and loop them in front of the knee on each knee. So we walk forward, get a bit of tension, and then squat down, pushing our knees forward. So this next issue you can only really see from the front. So what you'd do is you'd videotape yourself, and then I'm just going to draw a line straight down the middle, or middle-ish. I'll try and fix that. Yeah. Alright, good enough. So keep an eye on the line and where the hip starts to shift. So you're going to notice I end up on one leg and pushing off that one leg. So at the bottom we've shifted over onto our left side, and when we squat we're mainly going to be using that side to come up. So this can lead to some imbalances, can lead to pain just from overuse on one leg. Not all the time, but it's just an issue, again, that comes back to balance. So we can use a resistance band to fix this as well. But this time you're going to loop it away from the area that you're shifting away from. So for example, if I was shifting onto this leg, I would loop it over this leg. So what this is going to do is when you squat, it's going to try and pull you even more onto the leg that you're favoring, which is going to force you to push back against it and use your other leg a bit more. Again, it's almost like an overcorrection. So again, you loop it around your hips and give it a bit of tension. Again, the tension is going to be onto the leg that you're favoring, so you push away from it. Good. So it's trying to draw us this way, but we're pushing in the opposite direction. And then stand up and try and keep the tension over that for the entire time. So again, you can do this as a warm-up in between sets, after working out, or all of the above, depending on how pronounced the issue is. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Now, one thing I didn't mention with any of those exercises are sets and rep schemes that I would recommend. Again, this depends on the individual, but as a general rule of thumb, I would do anywhere from 10 to 20 reps for 3 sets. And again, you can do that as a warm-up and as a cool-down, or you can do a couple reps in between each set of squats so that you get a bit more mind-muscle connection to what you're actually trying to accomplish, and hopefully it carries into your sets. Anyways,